Hey guys, in this video, I interviewed John McClellan. He's a friend of mine, a longtime friend and amazing musician. He's played on a couple of my songs that you might be familiar with. He played on my song "A Faithful Witness" on the Whole World Will Know album, and he played on "The World Needs Love," amazing guitar solo. I think that's on the same album. Anyway, he is a amazing musician, producer, recorder. He records stuff, and he and my also another one of my collaborators, Pete Wade. He's played drums on a lot of my stuff. He played the whole "Remain in Me" album, and he played I think on "The Whole World Will Know" as well, a few of the songs. And he's an incredible worship leader, singer, and musician as well. Longtime friend also. So they are a part of a band called Soulfish. They've just released an album called Dust, a great album. So we talk about that album, but we also talk about just doing worship in the time of COVID. We talk about making mashup videos for our worship services. A little bit about the songwriting process, just a lot of great conversations. So I hope that you'll stick around and enjoy our conversation with John McClellan. Hey, John, good to see you.
Good to see you, man. I see that you've fixed your little lair up a little bit. Seems like
Yes.
we just had this conversation
Yeah,
a
it seems
moment
like we were
ago.
just talking about this before we started recording. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's good to
awesome.
have the garage back in shape for church and for everything that we do out here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I'm still actually my little lazy dog's just laying down,
oh.
chilling.
So what am I looking at? Is this like your office slash studio?
Yeah, this is my studio. It's kind of messy right now. I'll kind of give you a little tour. You can get an idea. Guitar amp, a bunch of guitars.
Cool.
We actually, I tore down a bunch of stuff because we did some recording yesterday down in my living room, and that's going to be fun to edit because I've got all the boominess from the wall.
Okay.
It's not treated at all, so I
Yeah.
was listening to the rough mixes, and it's I got some
You
work
might just
ahead of
have
me.
to lean into that. I've heard like recordings with I've heard like video you know, David Benoit, not David Benoit is a great guy from the jazz world, but
Yeah, yeah.
Daniel Lanois,
Oh
Daniel
yeah,
Lanois, I've
yeah.
heard a few interviews with him with U2 stuff and Peter Gabriel stuff. And he would always try to find a physical space.
Right.
He
Yeah.
didn't do a lot of stuff in the studio for that, like the Joshua Tree or
Right. Right. Right.
the Unforgettable Fire album or whatever. They were like in a castle. He would find
I
some
remember.
like,
Yeah, I remember that. I think on the cover of the Unforgettable Fire, which is actually my favorite U2 album,
okay, I love that one too.
they have that castle on the
Right.
cover,
And they
and I'm not
literally
sure if that's
recorded
where they
there.
filmed it. Is that where they recorded?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What was in a castle? I assume it was that one.
All right. I
But
don't know.
they would like find these halls, and they said the ideal spot was this hall where like the Edge's amp was at the end of this hall, and then they would
Oh
like.
yeah, that's
So
so cool.
anyway,
Yeah, but
maybe.
but still, it's I would imagine the acoustics would be a lot more interesting and dense in a 1,000-year-old castle than my 20-year-old house in
I
my
don't
living
know. I
room.
don't know.
But
Yeah.
we'll see, man. I have to go through everything and hopefully in the next few days, and that's for a couple of videos that were 3 videos that we're working on.
So these are for your church services or for
Well,
Soulfish?
some of our videos have been doing double duty. Using some things for church videos because we thought that originally we wanted to just to do a bunch of covers in the public domain, so we didn't have to worry about any copyright issues.
Right.
And
Old
so that's what
hymns
we
and
started
stuff.
doing, and we're using those for church services as well. And it just fine. The church asked me to put some things together, and we need video content as well, so that the old kill two birds with one stone kind of scenario pops up, and so that's what this is. And then we're also doing an acoustic version of This Way, and so we'll have content for the next 3 weeks. Like the idea, like we really want to make sure that we get out a video every week of some kind, and then we've got the next single that is coming out April 13th, and then we've already got the next 2 singles written, and we've recorded basic tracks on them. So the idea is just to put out a new single every month, put out some sort of video content every week.
Awesome.
That's the plan so far. And so far, like in the past month and a half, we've been pretty good about it. Actually, just a little bit over a month we've been doing that.
Cool. That's awesome. So let me just interject and say, if you're watching this, it's probably because you follow my YouTube channel or my Facebook page or something, and you're interested in worship or in songwriting or recording and stuff like that. So John is a great resource for all of that stuff. He is I would consider him a professional musician. He is amazing, amazing guitarist, great songwriter, and producer as well, and actually learning a lot of new producing tricks. So I want to kind of pick his brain about all that. But he also volunteers for the church for many, many, many years, probably what, 25 years or something, John?
Dude, yeah, I just had my 25th spiritual birthday.
Okay.
Infant baptism, we were really into it at that time.
That's right. So obviously COVID's been tough. So he's been helping out during COVID, and so there's a lot to catch up on and talk about. So anyway, hopefully if you're watching this conversation, we're going to kind of just ignore you and talk, but we're keeping you in mind. Hopefully you'll glean something from what we're talking about.
Yes.
So you were starting to tell me that you have been learning a lot more about video editing. So you're tell me how you're doing your services again, and how you've been contributing to that.
So we've been doing our services as opposed to doing it live, a live stream, which you guys do. I think that there's a certain authenticity to doing a live stream thing. And it's great. And if you can pull it off, more power to you. But in my mind, I kind of like the idea of doing videos beforehand and uploading them, just because once there's a whole different vibe when you're playing live, and obviously, and it's great. You're trapped in the moment, or you're caught up in the moment, and you make this music, mistakes, warts and all, and you put it out there. But when it's something that's going to be replayed again and again, I don't know. I tend to think that let's just sharpen it up a little bit. Let's make it a little bit more seamless. And so that's what we do. We have elements of our worship services that are live on Zoom, and other elements that are pre-recorded. The songs that we do, and the sermon is pre-recorded, but pretty much everything else is on the fly, and we do it live. And that's how we do it, for better or for worse. It seems to work out, and we have very good, well produced worship services. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've talked to Ralph a little bit. I think you guys have landed on a good kind of middle ground of interactivity plus,
Right.
excellence. Because, some of our churches are doing an entirely produced video that they just upload to YouTube, right? And then it's a YouTube premiere, and everybody watches it together. And so there's some interactivity in that people are chatting on the live stream. But to me, it feels just, it doesn't feel like you're in the moment enough,
Totally.
And then there's other churches that are doing just Zoom, and just purely Zoom, like super informal. Somebody might lead a song, just, you can't, Zoom audio is not the best, right? And
right.
It's especially for music, you can do this little thing where it says turn on original sound, and your guitar sounds a little better, but not much better. And
I figured out how to incorporate my Apollo, Universal Audio Apollo interface into my Zoom. I'm not using it right now, but I can do it. So theoretically, if you take into account latency issues and whatnot, you can actually play together in real time and get good sound.
Okay, so you just go into your Zoom settings, and you make that your input.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some boxes that you need to check, and there's some software that you have to. Soundflower is one example, and you use that as an aggregate device in your with them. And I'm using it with a Mac. I don't know how to do it with a PC. I would imagine it's similar, but you use it as an aggregate device in your MIDI audio setup, and you use that when you do it. But the problem with that is that it always messes up my audio settings when I go into Pro Tools.
Yeah, that's right.
I tend not to use it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. My son showed me that aggregate device thing on Mac. He's like a techie I
Mhm.
said almost said little, but he's like 19 years old. But he's way beyond me with tech stuff at this point. And but yeah, we did something, we did a little stuff with that, with the aggregate device thing when we were streaming initially. So
Yeah.
we kind of similar to you, we wanted to have authenticity. So we started, and we had some streaming stuff already, like video switching and stuff. So we started just streaming our services every Sunday, just basically me and Marshall, my son, like behind the tech, and just like
Mhm.
just doing live songs and just speaking, or maybe having
Yeah.
somebody pre-record a sermon. We would play that, and so it felt cool because it's, you're in the moment. There was some you also are there was times there was an error or something
Right.
crashed or didn't
Oh,
work
yeah,
right, and
totally.
everybody's right there along with you. That's happened a few times where we tripped a circuit out here in the garage, or different things have happened. So it's kind of an adventure every Sunday, but
Right.
it kind of feels like a live show. It is
Right.
a live show. It's like doing Saturday Night Live or something.
Yeah, and
But
you
we
can have the
also,
same issues when you're playing live at church as well,
yeah,
or any
that's
gig
right.
for that
Yeah,
matter.
that's kind of what we felt like. We want it to feel like, as much like, the regular experience, which is not a totally polished, perfect
Right,
experience
right.
that we wish it was, but it's not. But we have done some pieces as well, some produced pieces like you guys have been doing too, like because some of our, we have we can only have a few people in the garage at a time, and some people,
Right.
just because of their connection to people who are really vulnerable or whatever, they just can't
Yeah.
come, they
Oh,
can't
totally.
participate. So we produced some videos too. So I've been learning a lot of that, doing a lot of putting a lot of hours in on video editing
Oh,
myself
yeah.
too. And
Yeah,
like you
totally.
said, those are like, you want to make them perfect because they're gonna have a life to them.
Right, right.
So yeah, it's easy to spend. I mean, I've spent sometimes 8 hours, mixing a
Yeah.
song, and then another 8 or 10,
Yeah.
doing the video, or
Absolutely,
12.
man. Yeah,
So,
no, the average video typically takes me, mixing it, getting all the parts together. I mean, the easy part is actually the tracking.
yeah,
You spend a couple hours with that, and then
that's the part I like the most.
yeah, but then you have people that will send that will, we're all in our own little worlds here, and
Yeah,
and with varying varying degrees of caution about COVID. And just like you, we have people that would they want to stay home, but we want to make music. So how do we do that? So of course they record themselves, and of course they don't know anything about recording,
hmm,
and so they're recording on their iPhones,
yeah,
and they've got this really, sometimes the audio is not the greatest,
right,
and just being able to bring that in and figure out how to edit the audio to make it
yeah,
so it sounds good, and then putting it in a mixing it, and then attaching it to the video performance.
yeah,
And so yeah, so the average project takes me 12 14 hours.
yeah,
And I'm pretty fast with recording and with mixing, and I've gotten better with the editing, but that's still 14 16 hours of time, and that's a lot of time
yeah,
when you have other things going on with your life.
absolutely.
So
Well, and you mentioned a couple of things I want to mention to you, but one other thing you didn't mention was pitch correction. I have learned the tools of pitch correction just in the last few years. I wish I would have had, like, I listened
oh
to all
yeah.
my old albums, and I just can't stand it now because my ears have been tuned too much to pitch correction.
Yeah,
And because I didn't use pitch correction on any of my albums except my
yeah,
last one, my 2016 one. I
right,
used some,
right.
but so there's moments I'm just like, because
Oh,
I'm not Pete Wade, right? I don't have
yeah,
perfect pitch
yeah,
when I'm singing, but so I've done some of that. There's certain, I won't say, I got to be careful who's gonna watch
yeah.
this, but
Yeah, this one guy, oh my
there's certain,
gosh.
there's certain singers I never have to touch at all in
Right,
our
right.
group, and well, I don't think they'll be offended, but like our teens, like we did some stuff with our teens where all of our
Sure.
teens sang, and boy, I mean, there's some where, like, there's one where the girl sang, she sang, her delivery was great, like her presence, but she was singing
Yeah.
like in the wrong key. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I think her brain just did some kind of tweak, and she was singing the melody, but in the wrong key. So I just turned it into an alto part, but I mean, I'm changing every single note.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it turned out great, but you were playing it on the live stream, and people are like, man, those teens sound incredible. Their harmonies are
You don't know
amazing.
the truth of the matter.
It's like,
Yeah. I
whoa.
Dude, I feel like and I always tell whenever, I mean, nowadays, because we have the technology to be able to fix things. I always tell people, the most important thing is performance.
The delivery, yeah.
I would say performance first, the sound quality itself second. Um, Pitch is, I mean, you want to be 85, 90% there. But dude, if you think about like some of our favorite recordings of all time, and going back to like the Unforgettable Fire example, I
Yeah.
mean, his vocals were all over the place on songs like Wire.
Yeah.
But it works, and it's
Yeah.
wonderful, and it's so passionate
Yeah.
that you're willing to overlook it. But nowadays, just the mindset of the
Everything is
general
perfect
public,
now.
it has changed,
Yeah.
and plus we have the technology. There's really no excuse to have pitchy vocals. But
Have you
I
noticed
love
how
it.
pitchy Bono is on 40, the original, like
Oh
on the
yeah,
War album?
totally.
That
Yeah,
is so, yeah, and they recorded that. I guess they were super tired. They'd been recording for days and they just sort
yeah,
of threw that song on there. And
yeah.
so he's like, I will sing.
But
It's
it's
good though. It
very
works somehow. It's kind of like
it
it's that
totally does,
Irish sort
man.
of I'm sad and I'm broken and I'm just singing about my broken life and I just love
Yeah. Well,
it.
and the nice thing about it, I mean, the way that I deal with pitch correction, if I have to do a lot of pitch correction, then I mean, I'll know up front when I hear a performance if I'm going to have to do a lot of pitch correction. And if there's a good amount, then I tend to lean towards let's retrack this.
Yeah.
Just because it will, I think that pitch correction should be very subtle. It should be, I would rather have it be a little pitchy and sound natural and sound like it's part of the moment, and then do very minor tweaks than just have to move everything up, move everything down.
Yeah.
It should be transparent and it should be natural sounding.
I'm with you. I agree.
Yeah. So there's a balance there.
Yeah, I agree.
Always.
So when you said backing up to the cell phone, I get mostly cell phone recordings too, and I've noticed that iPhone. One thing that's nice about iPhones is that their compression is pretty good. I mean, it kind of
Right.
gives you a managed vocal. But what are you doing to like? I tell people, please don't record in the kitchen or in a hall
Yes.
because there's
Yeah.
nothing you can really do about that when it's really
Right.
reverby. But I noticed with phones, I usually got to take out the 1K to 12K
Yeah.
kind of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They seem to like really
Yeah.
peak
And there's
that
usually a,
1K
a, a
range.
frequency dip. Just you use a very narrow cue, and then you just kind of go because I do you end up cutting a little bit around that with also a narrow cue. And cue for the uninitiated, basically, if you think of a sine wave, the shallowness, that is the cue, basically the width of a signal. So if you're using EQ to cut, you don't want, if you cut out too much, then you lose a lot of the sound. But if you use a
Yeah,
very narrow cue, then you can kind of find across the using your ears where your offending frequencies are, and you can usually do that by boosting the frequency by 3 or 4K, sometimes more, and listening to it in isolation, and then back with context, because you don't want
yeah,
to cut out too much, so you have to listen into the context of the overall mix and individually, and then
right.
whatever that offending frequency is, then you cut it, so it's a
Yeah,
very narrow cut. And so I end up cutting, depending on it depends on the room, because you have
okay,
that resonant frequency up high that will have, like a lot of the room artifacts, but you also have one down low, and you need to
hmm,
cut that down as well. So I do
definitely got it.
that. I make sure that I boost. I'll use like a Neve 1073 plug-in, something like that from Universal Audio to boost the overall hair and grit of it. And
Okay,
I always use just a touch of saturation.
okay,
Saturation is really nice. You don't want it, I mean, unless you want it to sound
because it's
distorted.
too crystalline, kind of
So, well, it doesn't
too
necessarily have enough
digital.
character. It doesn't have
Yeah,
enough character to it.
that makes sense.
But your mileage may vary in all cases. But yeah, so I use a noise gate to cut out noise when they're not singing. Sometimes their voices are so low that I just have to go in and edit it and cut out the parts, which is a pain in the butt. But
Yeah,
sometimes I have to do that. And
gotcha.
and that's what I do, and I'll use some compression on it, and just make it fit in the mix. I'm not a big fan of I'm not one of those guys that is big into a lot of reverb on vocals.
Okay.
To me, when you hear a mix and the first thing you hear are the reverbs, it to me it smacks of amateurism. It
Mm,
really does, and so I'll use some reverb, but a lot of times I'll use reverb a couple. I like ambience, like room ambience. Sometimes I'll use just a delay on it with a touch of ambience. Sometimes I'll use a full-on reverb. It just depends. And then other times I'll use an aux send with a compressor and feed into the side chain and actually compress the reverb based on the vocal inputting that. So what happens when they sing, it compresses
oh,
the reverb, but as soon as they stop singing, you have the reverb
well, that's a good
expanded.
idea.
You get the
So
tails.
you're not messing with their vocal. You're not saturating their vocal as much, but it's filling up the tails of what they
Yeah,
say.
yeah. So you get the you get the sense. I
Huh.
mean, you could be really aggressive with it. When you do the send, you can go, you can do 0 dB and go up, and so it hits the compressor hard, which is going to compress that reverb hard.
Yeah.
You can be aggressive with it, or you can be more subtle with it. I tend to be a little bit more subtle with it, so you don't necessarily know it, but if you listen to it in isolation, you can hear the compression of the reverb signal. So it just makes it a little clearer to me. I'm generally not a big fan of pre-delay on reverb. I don't know, because I want to hear like I'm in a natural room. I am in a room and I can hear my voice reverberating. It can be very pleasant. It could be horrible, as we talked about with iPhone videos. But your room, if you have a relatively dead space, but it's not boomy,
Yeah.
that's a great place to record vocals in.
Yeah.
And then you add everything after the fact, and you base your reverb level and the type and the length on the tempo, on what else is going on in the song. So you could use it creatively without it being obtrusive, because I just hate obtrude, like a lot of these 80s recordings. They're
Yeah. Well, that
notorious.
was the age of reverb. Yeah.
Oh man, I don't. I like things a
Even
little
the
bit more
drums and
subtle.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's my personal taste. Yeah, again, your mileage may vary depending on what you like or what your tastes are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the great thing about this stuff is there is no right or wrong for a lot of it. It's a matter of
Right.
preference and stuff. But
Yeah.
I mean, getting into the aux sends and side chaining and stuff, it's a little advanced for some people, uh but the practical is don't overdo it like
Yeah.
with your bells and whistles. I think same with video, like you see people that are new to video editing and they want to like use all these fancy transitions or different
Yeah.
things. It's just distracting. It
Totally.
basically, it's funny because whatever it is they put in, kind of pro level, a few pro level things. But
Yeah.
then when you use those things, you don't look like a pro. You look like an
Oh,
amateur.
totally.
It's like
Totally,
you
man.
want to. It's subtlety is the way. It's kind of the equivalent of Microsoft Word and just using clip art like nuts, or using a different font for like everything, and just because you
Comic
can.
Sans.
Yeah, it's like no, just keep it simple, keep it
Yeah,
straightforward.
I
But
agree.
I do get a lot of people ask, what program did you use to do that video? Or, they kind of think it's sort of a automated thing, or,
Right.
that, or, wow, that was cool. You got everybody together to sing on Zoom, or, it's like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it's not really not like that. So, I've put a couple videos together that explain the process, but if anybody's listening to this, basically it's just, you got to create a track
Hmm.
that is the bare bones of your song for people to sing along with. Initially, I was doing instrumental tracks, but I found people would be more pitchy. So now what I
Yeah,
do is I put sample vocals on there. So I'll just sing all the parts, and I'll sing,
right.
so everybody can sing to that part. So actually that helps with the timing too. Everybody's
Yeah,
singing at the same time.
totally, totally.
And then people listen on a pair of headphones and send back their video with their phone of themselves singing to that track. With obviously they got to wear headphones so you can't hear the track. I'd had one person send it to me with you could hear the track. I'm like, oh man.
I've had that too. I said,
Yeah.
you got to redo it. The
So,
worst is when they sing really loud. They're singing too close to it, and you've
uh,
just got, you look at the waveform, it's just flat.
yeah,
They just
yeah,
clip the whole
that's right.
signal.
I had
So
one.
people, you want waves. You don't
Yeah,
want clipping. You
yeah,
don't want that. We
yeah,
let us work on it after the fact, and we'll compress it and make
right,
it even. Just a strong signal in a clean room, or a fairly dead room.
right,
That's the
exactly.
gist of it.
Then we get all these videos back and we take the audio off and put the audio into some kind of mixing software. So you can even use GarageBand. I've told people they can
Right.
do GarageBand. And I think to John's point, there's settings on GarageBand that are like um, for a vocal, that'll say like pop vocal or something. Don't use that because that's going to be
No,
like
ever.
monstrous delay and doubling and, just
Yeah.
make it as simple, as you can. There are some presets that might work, but then you want to make a mix of everybody sounding good from the audio side. Then you put that into your video editing program, and then you just line up all of your videos if they're all on one
Yeah.
screen, or you can
Yeah.
cut from one video to another. There's different ways you can do it, and you don't use the audio from those videos, but you use your nice produced track. So that's kind of
Right.
the overall process that we're both doing.
Yeah,
So, and
totally.
you're using Premiere, you said.
Yeah,
You have Premiere.
I'm actually using Premiere Elements. I tried Premiere, and it's fine. It's fine, but I thought, well, I don't really do this much. I'll probably upgrade to Premiere, but to be honest with you, I've been able to do everything with Premiere Elements, and I liken it to like GarageBand, for example.
Yeah,
So if you're just starting out, you don't need to buy a fancy program.
right.
Use GarageBand, learn how to use it inside out. Once you have a certain skill level, then you go to Logic Pro or Pro Tools
Exactly.
or something like that. Because you don't know what you don't know. So
Right.
I'm that way with video editing. I would still consider myself a skilled beginner.
Yeah. Yeah, me
I've
too.
been doing it long enough for like the last year that I've got I know how to work around it and accomplish what I want to accomplish. And my hope is that as I progress, as I get better at it, then I will outgrow this program.
That's
It's just
cool.
like I couldn't use GarageBand because there's too many
Yeah.
things that I can't do in GarageBand that I can do very easily in Pro Tools because I work with Pro Tools long enough where I'm quite adept at using
Right. I use for the video editing, I'm the same kind of a skilled beginner, but I use DaVinci Resolve, which
it.
is
Okay.
it's actually free. It's offered by Blackmagic Design. They're the ones that make these cameras that we have.
Oh yeah.
That and the it's pro level software. I think they give it away because people buy these. They have real high end cameras that are like for movie production and stuff. And
Right.
the kind of main feature of DaVinci Resolve is its color correcting capabilities and the
Nice.
Fusion engine and stuff. But it's got you can have basically limitless tracks of video and uh, it's got all the everything that you need. It's a little bit of a learning curve because it's a pro level software, but there's a
Right. Right.
ton of tutorial videos on
Yeah.
YouTube and
And
stuff.
yeah,
So
it's all
and it's
about
free.
spending time on it. It's all about
Yeah.
spending time in whatever you do. It's if it's too easy, well, then you're not going to have all access to all these. You're not going to be able to accomplish. Not necessarily. Actually, I shouldn't say that. You, if it's too simple, you're not necessarily going to be able to accomplish everything that you have in your mind. And I think like I Premiere Elements is just fine for me. I can accomplish everything I have in my mind at this point, but I can definitely see myself outgrowing it, especially once I start adding like real cameras as opposed to iPhones and
Yeah.
iPads.
Yeah.
That's what we're using for. Like yesterday was a three camera shoot. We had an iPad over here, and then an iPhone at 4K right in the middle,
Yeah.
and it
Well,
works.
speaking of color correcting, I mean, like that's one thing I noticed with iPhones. Like that, it's amazing how much automation has been packed into those things. The
Oh
color is
yeah,
always good, like
yeah,
whereas you use a pro level camera, there's a lot of color correction you got to do or lighting correction you got to do
really,
because, yeah, but because it's not automatic, right? You
right,
got it.
right,
So, but the iPhone is just always, I mean, low light, lots of light, it's just always gonna give you pretty decent color.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
pretty amazing.
yeah.
So let's talk about the band. Let's talk about the project. So Soulfish is the core of Soulfish is I mean, Soulfish has involved different musicians through the years, but
Right.
the core is Pete Wade and John McClellan, and both great musical friends of mine. And initially, Soulfish was more of a cover band, I would say, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, like
Initially,
in 2007.
yeah.
And it was so much fun, man. We had yeah, it was great. We played a bunch of clubs, and we were out there, and it was a great time. We had some really fantastic musicians playing with us, and we were able to get out there, and it was a good time. And then it just kind of fell apart.
Yeah. And
Not because of egos or anything, or
right,
artistic differences, but just time.
people's lives and families and stuff going on, and
Exactly.
careers, etc. You were launching your own business for a while.
Yep, and I so last year I saw actually Pete was playing, or rather mimicking playing drums on one of your tunes, and it was okay. I got somebody coming. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I saw him playing, and I said, "Dude, yeah." So it looks like he got the setup, and we were talking. I said, "Let's. What do you say we write a couple of songs?" And so we started doing that, and then, well, what do you say we'll do an EP, and we write a few more songs. We might as well just do a whole album, and because we had a bunch of songs, and so we did the album, and it came time. We should probably pick a name, and we were racking our brains, and I think
But you weren't going to call yourself Soulfish initially. It was just you and Pete wanted to work on a
exactly. We
project.
were just writing songs, and so we thought, well, we got Pete still has the domain name. We still have the logo.
Yeah.
We still have so not this year, but we still have some Soulfish t-shirts. So yeah, so that's the name we went with, because it was always, I mean, the core of it was always Pete and myself. I mean, Pete and I started the band, and we added different members, and they were all wonderful. I mean,
Here's
yeah,
the album. Can you see the
yes,
album?
I
Okay.
do, I do.
So there's the cool logo. Did you
Yes.
design that?
What's that?
Did you design that logo?
No. It was somebody. It was one of those things where you pay someone a certain amount of money to
This
have your logo designed.
I
And
recognize this font right here is called 28 Days Later.
is that what it is?
Yeah, that soul part. It's 28 Days Later
Oh,
font. I used to use that a lot in the grunge, when the grunge
okay.
design.
Well, this is
I love the logo.
2007.
It's very cool.
And yeah, so we had someone design the logo, and that was it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that's basically how we came up with Soulfish, and here we are.
that's awesome. Well, I love the album. It's great. So tell me about the process. I mean, you're mostly writing the songs, and then Pete is kind of contributing to them, or are some of these ones that he came up with?
Yeah, so the first song was This Way, and we actually wrote that back in 2009. We wrote it at a band rehearsal. And we just sat down, and we just had acoustic, and Carrie Benoit helped out, and Matt Kendall. We were just sitting in this room, and we just wrote this song, and we didn't even think about it. We recorded it on our phone. It probably wasn't even an iPhone at the time, but we recorded it, and so we were thinking about what songs to do. And I had this recording and it was all distorted, and but I loved the bones of it, and
Yeah.
we just recorded parts. And the way that the process usually goes is I'll come up with a song, and I'll do, I don't know, let's just say 80% of it, 85% of it, and then Pete will figure out, help with the melodies, we'll tweak some lyrics, help with the arrangement, and it really is a team effort, because it's nice to be able to bounce ideas back and forth, and we'll talk through things, and then we'll record our individual parts. A lot of times I'll go up to him, and we'll record drums there. And sometimes he'll come down here, and we'll record vocals here. It just depends on schedules. But for the album, I would say probably 95% of it was recorded, him at his place and me at my place. Now we've kind of become more interactive with it, just upgrading our gear and stuff like that over the last few months. So going forward, we're like we recorded 3 songs a couple of weeks ago. We recorded drums, and we were playing live. I mean, kind of live. I was playing acoustic guitar and playing along with the scratch vocal, and he's playing drums. So we're kind of got a little bit more of a live feel to
Okay.
it, as opposed to the album where everything is kind of piecemealed.
Yeah. It is there's value in both, right? There's real
Yeah,
value in kind of being by yourself and just kind of having quiet and coming up with stuff, but then there's such value in playing with some other musicians and
yeah,
the
yeah.
energy of it. And it just depends on what you're trying to capture, right? And
Right, right. And
but
it just seemed to work out better that way, just with, especially in the earlier days of the pandemic. Not really sure how serious it really was, or the effect of it, and then just plus time. Time is even in lockdown, we still find something to occupy our time, and life goes on, and so that's was kind of the situation that we were in. And I was really grateful because I wasn't working at the time. I got laid off from a job that shut its doors, and because of the pandemic, and so I was just able to spend a lot of time for those first few months and get the album recorded and mixed and get it out there. So it was really cool, and it was also what was a lot of fun about it was, I would say, even though I'd been recording, for a good portion of my life, even going back to a teen, I would say that my skill level by the time we were done with the album just went through the roof compared to
yeah,
what it was before. There's so many resources online, dude. It's crazy. And you know this, it just, understand, you have 10, 15 videos explaining sidechain compression and
yeah,
dynamic EQ, and how to do this or that. And it's been fantastic. So
yeah.
it's been a blessing to be able to spend the time making this record, and I was really happy with the way it turned out. But listening back to it, I say, "Ooh, I should have done this. Ooh, I should
Yeah.
have done that." But
It's never finished.
You got
It's
to
never
stop at some
finished. You
point.
just gotta, that's my thing is I gotta release it or I'll keep working on it, because
Exactly,
it's
man.
never ever finished.
Yeah.
And once it's released in the world, it's still like I want to fix it sometimes, or I'll make a
I'm the
new
same way.
updated version or like whatever. But so yeah, I've noticed that you've continued to learn and progress and learn a lot from, I mean, I got to hear a few of your tracks early when you were kind of starting, and then I heard tracks towards the end, after 6 months or 7 months or something. You could tell you'd really been working on a lot of tips and tricks and tools. And
Yeah.
what for somebody who's trying to learn to record or to produce, what do you think are the most important? Because it is, like you said, there's so many resources, it's almost
Right.
overwhelming. And if you don't have a lot of time,
Yeah.
it's kind of like you just look at the world of YouTube and you're like, oh my
Right.
gosh, this is incredibly overwhelming. So what would you say are the most crucial things to learn to start with, or
Um,
most important
I mean,
lesson?
it really, I would say that the first two things are not recording related at all.
Okay.
The first thing is you got to make sure you have a good song. It doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily have to be a great song, but it should be a good song.
Yeah.
And now, how do you get to the point where you're writing good songs? Well, you write a whole lot of bad ones, and
Yeah.
then you
That's
write a
right.
whole lot of mediocre ones. A maxim that I'd heard recently, which is really great, and it actually was apropos for the way that the album came together, is you write 30 songs. You write, if you're going to have 10 songs on the album, you write 30 songs, you record 20 songs, and you pick 10 songs.
Okay.
So instead, if you only write 10 or 12 songs, then you have to pick the best 10 or 12 out of 10 or 12. If you write 30 songs, well, that you're more likely to have a few really good songs and possibly a couple of great ones. And so it all starts with the song. That's the first thing. And then the second one is the arrangement. It's how you arrange everything. You can say it's the production, and yeah, that there's elements of that are true. But if you have a song, even if it's just going to be acoustic guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and harmonies, you can still design it the layout so it's more interesting. Like maybe instead of just the band coming in at once, maybe you have an element, maybe you just have the drums and only part of the part of the drums come in with maybe something off in the background that'll have little pieces of a guitar with a lot of reverb panned
Yeah.
way off, so it creates this kind of atmospheric and a naked vocal coming in. And then you bring in another, I mean, that's just an example, but you think through how you want the song to sound and you arrange it like that. And once you have a solid arrangement, then you start going through the elements. You make sure that all your balances, and this is how I do it. That this is how I do it. Make sure all the levels, you listen to it first without any EQ or your compression, just adjust the levels and get a good feel for what the whole thing is going to sound like. And I tend to mix as I go.
Hmm.
There will be people who say, well, you should track everything first. Um, to me, it saves me time mixing as I go. So I'll make sure if I've got the drums there, well, let's get a basic drum sound, knowing that I'm going to change it once it starts filling out, because maybe that kick drum that sounded so awesome by itself with a naked arrangement, maybe in the context, it's got a bunch of stuff
Yeah.
that's
Changes
drawing it
everything.
out and you can't hear it.
Yeah.
So you might have to carve it out a little bit more in your mix later on. But I would say that the first thing, like I said, is your song. Second is arrangement. Third, listening to everything as it is so that you can hear everything in your head and how you want it to sound. And then you start tweaking everything. I would say that if I had to pick one thing that I would do above all else is properly EQ everything.
Okay.
Anything like vocals, just make sure you do a low shelf. Do a low
Yeah.
shelf. So get rid of those low. If you've got a high female singer, she's not hitting anything below 200 hertz.
Right.
Just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because if you have noise or rumble or anything in the room, that could build up track over track, and you're going to get all this mud. Get rid of everything. It's the same thing with other instruments. If you've got a ukulele, that's not going to be playing low frequencies.
Yeah.
But like conversely, a kick drum, you're not going unless you want a specific sound. You're not going to need anything above 2-3K unless
Right.
you want to bring out the beater, and that's usually about 2.1K. Um, but you make sure you carve it out of your mix, get rid of the mud that lives somewhere between 200 to 400 hertz, do low cuts, narrow cuts. So you always cut narrow, boost broad. So
Okay. I never heard that. Okay. That makes
yeah,
sense. I
cut
guess I
narrow.
do that. I guess I do that. I just never thought about it. But yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah. You
that way
never
you
want to,
want to
you
get
never
rid of
want to notch boost.
exactly, because it just
Sounds
sounds,
unnatural.
it does sound unnatural.
Yeah.
Whereas
And
a
usually when you're
narrow.
notching, you're trying to correct something. So you just kind
Exactly.
of want
Use
that out.
EQ as a corrective tool.
Yeah.
Instead, the first thing, instead of going, you see something sounds weird, something sounds dull or boomy. The first thing is not to
Yeah.
boost it with an EQ. The first thing is try doing subtractive EQ.
Yeah.
EQ it, try and get the muddy parts or the ugly parts out of the mix, and then you can boost it as necessary, because you'll find that if you start cutting out the bad frequencies or the bad sounds, you're not going to have to boost as much for that to be a little
Right.
bit more prominent in the mix.
Right. That's a
So
good point because EQ, I like that you kind of singled that out as most important because it is a great mixing tool as well.
yeah,
Because again, it depends on context because like if you have an acoustic by itself, if all you have is an acoustic and a vocal, you want that acoustic to sound rich and full and kind of
right,
as much of the spectrum as you can get. But if
yeah,
you have a bass guitar and a drummer and a acoustic and a keyboard, you're going to want to have everything have its own little
yeah,
spot in the EQ. So you might want the acoustic to sound, might
yeah,
want to take some of the lows out because maybe you want that from like a Fender Rhodes keyboard sound. You
yeah,
want that to kind of inhabit that, 400, 500K area, and you
yeah,
want
yeah,
more of the shimmer in the acoustic. And then, what I mean? So it's also a mixing tool.
yeah. We talked about that on actually one of your songs, if you remember, where you had acoustic guitar, and but when it was by itself with just a vocal, it didn't have that low end.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when I do situations like that, I'll actually automate the EQ. so
Yeah.
that like when the song is by itself, the EQ is full, you hear the low frequencies of the acoustic guitar. But as soon as the kick and the bass and the keyboards come in, I'll automate a shelf that will get rid of those low frequencies, so it sits in the
It
mix and
makes
it
room for everything.
does not take up any of that that space that the bass and kick and keyboards take.
That's kind of the biggest thing I've been learning and still trying to learn. I feel like I have so much to learn on is kind of the less is more um
Yeah,
idea. You know, uh I've been doing music like you for a long time, but my biggest influences back when I was first writing songs and recording songs and in a band and all that, it was like in the late 80s. So, I was into, Peter Gabriel and
yeah,
U2
yeah.
and
As
these
was I.
bands that layered so much. I mean, they, like
Yeah,
you mentioned the Unforgettable Fire album and Brian Eno and his the whole thing was just so many layers.
yeah,
And so when I first started recording, it's like I love, and I'm a multi instrumentalist, so I'll play the keyboards and play guitar, or play bass, or play some
yeah.
program drums usually, but maybe play
Right,
some
right.
drums nowadays. But I just get excited and just add so
Yeah.
many tracks, and then there's so much there that it's like it's just mush, or
What the trip about that album in particular, I mean, for an example, you listen to it now. I just listened to a few songs from it last week, and it's amazing that there is a whole lot less going on in there than I thought there
yeah.
was. I mean, there really is.
Well, that's the genius of it is they put so much content, and Coldplay's like this too. Like I listen to
Right.
a lot of Coldplay nowadays, but there's so much stuff, but then they do a great job of subtracting things and just
Yeah.
highlighting different things. So like in one verse, it's more of in a Coldplay song, maybe in one verse, it's more of just the acoustic going and a
Yeah.
little, some kind of little thing that's happening on just a little kind of minimal drum thing. And then in
Right.
another
Right.
verse, it's like, Johnny's guitar is just shimmering and it's like full cymbals and everything, but it's like it's making it different in each
Yeah.
section rather than what I would do, which was just play all the way through on every
Right.
track. And
Totally. No, yeah, absolutely. And that's uh I don't know, maybe it's an old school mentality where you're gonna just okay, one, two, three, record, and you record through the whole song.
right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I made a mistake, I gotta start over.
Right.
I made another mistake, I gotta start over.
Yeah.
And you could punch in, but you want that continuity of performance. But nowadays, and actually you gave that advice, and it was good advice about just recording things in pieces,
Hmm.
or and not thinking so much linearly as opposed to thinking from a macro perspective. Okay, I just want one guitar sound, I hear this sound right here, so I'm just going to record from that point to this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And instead of just okay, let's listen to the whole song and then I'm going to record. No, dude, that's a long time. It's a waste of time. Just punch
Yeah.
in, punch out, and it's simple.
Yeah. And just I've been listening to more like kind of folky music and stuff like that lately. I just turned 50, so I like sad, folky sounds, I guess. I
Yeah,
don't know. But I mean, it's amazing just how much rich is like on an album by like Iron and Wine or something, like just the richness of just an acoustic and a vocal, like
yeah,
just so that's I'm trying to learn more just how to just get the most out of less, and that's kind of tied
yeah,
into what we're doing on Sundays too, because we've had Sundays where it's just me and a guitar or just a couple of us, and so it's like I want to try to learn how to get more out of less.
yeah. No, totally, totally. I know what you mean. And when you start stripping things down, you that's usually when you realize, oh, you know what? I probably need a better mic. I
Hmm.
probably, I probably because it's naked, and
Yeah.
you want it to sound as good as possible, uh, there's nothing wrong with starting with like a simple Focusrite, a little two-channel thing to get. It's just like it's analogous to what we talked about with GarageBand. You could
Yeah.
start off like that, but once you start getting to a certain level, you start realizing that you're being limited by the quality of your equipment.
Yeah.
My first guitar was not an expensive guitar. I had a cheap guitar, but
Yeah.
after a while, as I started progressing, I started realizing that my ability to be able to get to the next level is being hampered by the quality of the instrument.
Yeah,
And so
that's true.
that's when I would get, buy a better guitar, and then I'd see my playing increase. And it's not unlike recording. You realize early on that you don't need a bunch of stuff early on. You don't. It's amazing what technology will be able to do, what technology can do today.
Yeah,
So you don't need anything expensive, but after a while, you're going to realize that your recordings don't hold up compared to professional recordings. And you've looked at all the tutorials, you spent hours and hours and hours doing it, and you start realizing, well, my one of my limitations, I can definitely improve my skill set, but I'm limited by the quality of my preamps and my converters and my microphones, the program that I'm using. All these things are inhibiting your development.
yeah,
But you don't to start out. You just record. You just do it.
right.
You just do it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think one thing that inhibits artistic people is feeling like it has to be perfect. It has to be
No.
this vision that I have in my mind, and it's just not going to be that. It probably isn't that even when you're, you know, when you're way far along. But I think people do get inhibited by, or they get held back by this feeling of it has to be perfect before I'll share it, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of, especially being someone of faith who's an artist, is just like I'm not doing this for me anyways. It's not about
Right.
self-expression. It's about sharing. It's about
Yeah.
sharing what God has given me with others. And so
Right.
it's imperfect. It's not, you know, ideal, but I'm just going to share it, right? And so
Yeah.
even that this I get reports of people who listen to my music and stuff, and it's still, whatever, but I'm making new music. I'm making new music under this name Ties to the Light, which is a kind of more like an alternative rock kind of stuff.
Reminds me, I
That's,
still owe you a guitar solo.
oh yeah, yeah, send me that when you get a chance.
I gotta work on
uh
that.
give me, or actually, if you just send me that riff a couple times too, I want to hear your
Okay.
beautiful tone on that riff.
Well, I thought about I think what I'm going to do is I'm
Oh
going to take that audio with you doing your
yeah, my
Jack
Jack
Black
Black
impression. I'm
guitar
just going
solo.
to put it. I'm going to put it in the track, and I'm just going to record what you're doing there.
Did I record that to the track?
No,
Was
you just
I
had it
playing?
naked by itself.
Oh, okay, because I'm not sure if I was, but I mean, was I singing along with the track? Like, is it
I think in the
in time?
background. I think in the
Okay,
background.
okay, so that could
Um,
work. That could
yeah.
work. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh, so yeah, I'm doing new music that I'm excited about. I'm doing new worship music too. But still, what everybody listens to is like this album I put out, 20 years ago, called "Be With Me, Lord," and I was
Mm,
just recording those songs for the purpose of just sharing these songs that we were singing, so other people might know
right.
how to sing them. And I had built some tracks because we had this singles conference and I couldn't get any musicians to come. So I made my own tracks,
Right.
and played
Right.
along. Me and Elias DeLoe, we just played along to
Oh,
these
that's so
tracks I
cool.
built. So I just had these tracks. I was like, I might as well make an album of these, but I didn't have good recording equipment. I had a ADAT, if
Yeah.
anybody knows what an ADAT is. So I
Yeah.
just had 8 tracks, and so I would like mix. I would record like 6 tracks of instruments and then mix those down to 2. So now I've got 6 left. And
Yeah.
then
I remember
and
that
then
one.
add 6 more, so it's kind of cheat and get more tracks that way.
Yeah.
But it was not the best equipment. It does not sound very good. I listened back to it. It's like, oh, even the song "Be With Me, Lord," like I was playing this electric guitar, and the tone is like, I was going for that African, the African guitar sound that's just very trebly and very, it's like
Sure.
it's
Sure.
major key and really trebly, kind of like
Sure.
world beat kind of thing. So that's what I was going
Okay.
for. But when I listen back to it, it's just so it's so
Oh,
pokey. It just hurts my ears. It's so trebly and pokey. And but man, I mean, that somebody just sent me a thing on Facebook Messenger. A brother from the Philippines who's at work. He's got his little name tag and he's in some like industrial playing. He's playing "Be With Me, Lord," and he's sitting there and singing it. And
right on.
sends me this recording. So it's like God did something with it, even though it was
Yeah.
very, very imperfect artistically. So the thing is, just whatever tools you have, make art with that, and then
Absolutely, dude.
keep building from there. Yeah,
I would agree with you. Don't use what you don't have as an excuse not to get
right.
started. You have no excuse nowadays.
And
None.
sometimes being limited can actually fuel creativity.
Yeah.
I think that's something too that I've learned during this COVID time, where we are so limited. it's like sometimes the limitations cause you to kind of be more creative in some way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, you certainly have more time to be introspective,
Yeah.
which is which can be good, but it can be bad as well. I've looked at COVID as just being in a lot of ways, it's been a time of tremendous growth for me, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. In other ways, it hasn't been so great. I definitely have been more lonely than I've been in the past. A lot of times, I revel in my loneliness. I love being alone.
uh,
But there's still, we're designed to be social creatures. We're
right.
designed to be to need one another, and so it's COVID has been detrimental to me in that regard. But other things, it's been wonderful.
That's great.
Aside from all these people dying and stuff like that, it's been
Yeah.
pretty great.
Well, I'm glad you've been able to take the time to make this art, and I love the album. It's really good. It's great. I mean, it's pretty amazing. All of it, and you've got more songs on the way. So
Yeah.
this album has 9 songs. They're all really good. What's your? Well, I know it's hard to say what your favorite one is, but which one you feel like just everything came together on, if you had to pick one?
So I mean, there's a few songs that come. Well, I like Spiritual Machines. I love the idea. It just starts off with just acoustic guitar and
Let me
vocals,
just
and then it ends up into this double time gospel thing.
let me play a little bit. This is Spiritual
Okay.
Machines, right?
Yeah.
I'm too far into it. So you say it starts with just yeah. Starts with just yeah, this one has a real progression to it. Like you said,
Right. And what I like about it is the ending. It goes from that and it becomes something completely different at the end.
yeah,
And it comes back around to
it
the
becomes
beginning.
more art, more of a band thing.
Yeah. It becomes a gospel tune.
Yeah, at the end is a and the soul never dies. Yeah,
What was hilarious about that? So when I first recorded it for Pete, he's like, "Dude, why did you do a country hoedown?" Because I had the claps on the wrong beat.
oh yeah, on the 1 and the 3 instead
Yeah,
of 2.
exactly. So I had to re-record that part
Yeah.
and just put the claps on the right beat. But I
That's the
think
difference right there between gospel and bluegrass, where you get
yeah.
the clap. Yeah.
I think that the song I think that resonates deepest to me is Dust.
Oh yeah, I love that song.
It's not my favorite song on the record, but
The sound of it is your acoustic is so good. Were you using two? Is that 2 tracks of
yeah,
acoustic?
yeah. I used no, I used just a stereo.
And you just do stereo miking.
Yeah, just you have a large diaphragm mic closer to the not facing the sound hole.
Right. You get too
But
much low
just
end.
kind of picking up the lower frequencies of the guitar, and then a pencil mic or a small diaphragm condenser pointed at the 12th fret. But you got to make sure that they're the distance is, because if they're
You
too
don't get
far
fades.
away, then you're going to get phase cancellation. So you
Right.
got to make sure that. But then you also have to watch here, because you actually have signals that will bounce off the body of the guitar, creating
Yeah.
a comb effect. So it's just you got to make sure you angle it a little bit so it's off axis and then
Yeah.
straight on, and yeah.
Play a little more of that. Yeah, I love your acoustic sounds so good. What's the pencil mic you're using?
Oh, it's just this little. It's this thing that I've had for.
Okay, yeah, I have one like that.
It's like a little Octava MC012. I've had this thing for 20 years, and
Yeah,
it's
I have
still.
a. Let me turn this down. I have a drum kit, like a cheap drum mic set
Yeah,
that came with
yeah.
2 of those that are
Yeah,
pretty
and
good.
then when you have like two small diaphragm condensers, you can just do an XY configuration, starting at the 12th, pointing at the 12th fret, like that. So you pick up these coincidental fields,
Yeah.
and they're both cardioid patterns. So it just gets rid of this. I mean, it doesn't get rid of it, but like the space right here, and instead you get all of this, and
Okay.
you get a really nice sound that way as well.
I have these, well, these Rhodes, the long
Oh yeah, yeah.
guitar mics, and I noticed on I don't know if you know the podcast where they'll it's an NPR All Songs Considered, and they do
Uh-huh.
a thing called Tiny Desk Concert,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and they use those Rhodes mics for everything,
Yeah.
even the vocals. They're just pointed at the vocalist and pointed at the guitar. That's even their logo is one of those mics, and so I tried using that for my vocal on something, and I was like, man, I love this sound. It's just a different sound than the one
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
diaphragm, and it sounds really good on the guitar. I love it on the guitar, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
start playing with that. But I
Yeah,
might do what you're talking about.
I think that just I mean, you can record two tracks. I'm not a big fan of just doubling it.
Hmm.
It's not the same thing. But if you do double it, if you do double a guitar, I mean, like a quick trick. If you have it, like you have a guitar track right here, and you want to just double it, so you have two tracks. Just set them very slightly off, very slightly off in terms of their where they sit in the timeline.
Panning.
Uh,
Oh, in the timeline.
yeah,
Okay.
just so it creates a thickness without it sounding like the exact same signal, and then just EQ it a little bit differently and
Yeah.
set them off in different parts of the mix. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll do that sometimes just to add some depth. Maybe I'll have a little. I'll use a reverb where I'm going to pan the reverb off to the side, so that I get this kind of echoey sound with, but it's there. The original guitar is there in that side, and you can hear it a little bit better than if you just pan the reverb off. It's
Yeah.
just to create depth. I mean, little tricks that you do.
That's cool. I love the snare on this song too. It's kind of a gated,
Yeah,
squashy.
I don't remember what I did.
It's cool. Yeah, it's funny too because when I heard it, it reminded me, especially the beginning. The beginning really reminded me of this song by Jars of Clay
Oh,
Ferry. So I sent it to you, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's exactly."
that's exactly what I was going for. That and Mississippi from Train, which is
Oh
another great
yeah.
song.
Oh.
Yeah, just the haunting atmospheric, and I like. The thing about lyrics is, uh, I don't. I mean, it's very easy to say, "Oh, the sun was shining today."
Yeah.
And okay, that's simple. It gets your point across. But I think it's something. It's a lot more eloquent and a lot more appreciating the intellect of your listeners
Yeah.
instead of just saying something as simple as that. Describe the effect of it. The feel the warmth upon your face. The melting of the wax, the hardening of the clay, the life that the light brings. The effects of it rather than the thing itself.
That's
And
cool.
what about Dust is that it doesn't. The lyrics are a little bit, I wouldn't say necessarily abstract, but it really is about trying to find the balance in our spiritual lives between obedience and understanding the thing about grace. And grace has been a huge. I've been considering that a lot. I've been reading the Ragamuffin Gospel by Brennan Manning, and he's a little bit of a controversial guy amongst evangelicals. But I'll tell you, it's I appreciate being reminded of the fact that I am a jacked up person.
Hmm.
I am a sinner. I sin every day, and yet for some inexplicable reason, God is crazy about me. He
Mm,
loves me. He may not be a fan of Soulfish, but I know that he's a fan of John McClellan.
right.
I appreciate being reminded about that. And that's what the song is about. I mean, you understand that we are dust. We are
Yeah.
made with dust, and yet for some reason we're imparted with God's spirit in our lives when we become Christians, and we can live a fully fulfilled
Yeah.
life. And that's what the song is. But it does, of course, it doesn't say any of that in the song. And
Right.
that's how I like writing. I like writing words that are not necessarily or not intentionally obtuse or abstract, but that convey this idea of what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, and putting it out there, and people can interpret it as they want.
Yeah, well, I like what you said because I think what you just described, kind of your relationship to grace and sort of how you identify yourself before God is that comes through, I think, all the way through the whole album. and a song like Dust that's a lot more sort of introspective sounding. But even a song like Stand, which is like, I'll
Yeah.
just play a little bit of that. It's super upbeat
Yeah.
sounding. I mean,
That
starts
was
with
an
this.
dude. That was an acoustic guitar when I was
What?
writing. Yeah, when I was writing the song, I did a demo track and I put down acoustic guitar. And just for kicks, what's gonna happen? What would happen if I put an amp sim on it? And it was this nasty, distorted sound, and I made it sound even more nasty. And that's
Wow. So that's a really upbeat song,
yeah,
but but it's still the lyrics are really what you're describing
yeah,
of just kind of I'm frail and I need help and
yeah. It's
just
Ephesians 6. Put on the full armor of God.
yeah,
And after you've, gosh, I'm so bad
yeah.
at memorizing
I
scripture.
really I love the melody of the chorus. Does it go to the chorus here? Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Pete, he's really. I find that writing stuff, it brings out. There's a certain quality in his voice that when I go to a higher key, it makes him work harder.
In
But it
Pete with
also
Pete.
bring, yeah, in Pete, but
Yeah.
it brings out this kind of sweet bell-like quality to his voice that I love. Yeah. So
He's a great singer, man.
therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, just stand. I
Yeah, I
love
love
that,
that.
dude. Ephesians 6:13. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's what the song is about. It's like,
yeah.
I'm jacked up, but I'm gonna fight it with everything that I got. And I'm gonna go toe to toe with evil, and I'm gonna win. And at the end, even if I'm beaten up and battered and bruised and barely hanging on, like John Wick at the end of the first three movies, uh, I'm gonna stand.
You can
And
connect with that with your dog, huh? You
oh,
can
totally,
connect.
dude. Totally. But yeah, so that's that I love the songs. I love the epilogue.
So tell me about that one because I remember that one. I don't remember the title being. Was the title always epilogue for
It
a
always was, and
western?
we
I don't
changed.
remember the for a western thing.
What's hilarious, to me, what's
Let me
hilarious.
play a little bit of that one. This one's like
Yeah,
a Johnny Cash song or something, right?
yeah.
Uh, oh, this one starts with some screeching guitar too. Oh no, I'm playing
Oh,
the wrong
that's
one.
Stan.
Okay, wait. Here we go. I was like, I didn't think that one started that way. Oh, here you go. The words of this remind me of like a Johnny
So when
Cash.
it started out, I wrote this on the same day as I wrote. Oh gosh, what was it? I think it was. I wrote it as the same day
And
that
this
I
is
think
you
I wrote
singing, by the
Stan.
way, right? This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
you singing.
So
Hallelujah.
so it was like in the afternoon. I'd written Stan in the morning, and went out, took a break, and I heard, because originally I was thinking that I would love to finish the album like with a Negro spiritual. I don't know if you
Hmm.
can say that word, but well,
I
like
don't. The black brothers and sisters in my church say that, and then I'll say I'm just going to call it a spiritual.
I just gonna call it a spiritual, an old school spiritual song, and that's what I wanted. And I remember looking for some that were in the public domain. A lot of songs from that age are public domain, but none of them were exactly what I was looking for. And that afternoon, I came back from lunch and I had this idea, and I just started writing the words, and I picked up the guitar and I wrote the song in about 10 minutes. But the lyrics were, I think the lyrics are, I'll be crossing over the Jordan with a six gun in my hand. I'll be crossing over the Jordan with a
Oh,
six gun in my hand. And then the second verse, I'll be with some whiskey by my side. I'll be something with some whiskey by my side. And so it kind of conjured up this image of a Western a little bit more. But then Pete was like, I don't know. And then my wife Nancy was like, no, it's not, because it just. So I like the idea, and to me it sounds kind of like. I mean, the whole idea is that you're getting all your stuff together because you're going to go to Canaan's land. You're going to cross over the Jordan. You're going to go to the Promised Land, and that's what it's about, going to the Promised Land. And I
yeah,
think of dust and dirt and sand, and I think westerns.
yeah.
And so I have my friend, our friend Luke Maurer, playing He's playing two violin or a violin and two violas
Oh
on the
wow.
song. I have Peter
Oh yeah, I hear
Markowski
that.
playing.
That's pretty. You said who?
Peter
Markowski's doing
Markowski
what?
is playing ukulele and doing vocals. So what I love about the this whole part, there's like 46 different voices,
Wow.
distinct
Yeah, it
voices
gets
in
really
there.
big.
And so Peter Wade did a bunch of them. I did a bunch. Peter Markowski did a bunch, and just kind of, I mean, that was kind of interesting to figure out how to make it all work, and just
Yeah.
using each part as sending it to its own bus, aux bus, and making sure that I trail I trim the edges so everything starts and stops at the same time. Lots of pitch correction, and
Hmm. Well, it sounds
and
great.
yeah.
Yeah, I love how it builds. So now I know why it's called For a Western.
Yeah,
That
and,
makes
and
sense.
and it's a blatant ripoff of uh, "Exit for a Film" from Radiohead off the OK Computer
Uh
album.
huh.
I thought,
Yeah,
well, I love
I
Radiohead.
love Radiohead too.
But yeah, so I thought epilogue for a western.
That's great.
Why
That's
not?
great. That's awesome. Well, I like all of them. I like Beautiful World too, just because it's so chill. It just makes me feel.
Yeah,
Let me play a little bit of that. Just makes me
yeah,
feel relaxed, and
yeah,
uh, I love that you
yeah.
start this one with the
Well, at the end, it's
effects.
also got I've got like the sound of helicopters and explosions and gunfire because it just
Just I
sounded
love.
too
It's
nice.
just very chill. I just love
Yeah,
this. But it's the juxtaposition, right? Of
yeah.
I'm relaxed and I'm at peace, but the world is a mess, right?
No, it's actually a just juxtaposition of there's this concept called the tyranny of the or. And
Okay.
we live in a world where that says it has to be either A or B, but certainly not C, and certainly not A and B. We live in a culture that tries to define us. If we don't believe in this, therefore we must be this. But
Okay.
it's like the question. So Brian, are you still beating your wife? Yeah,
No
yes or no.
comment.
Well, you got to answer it yes or no. But some questions require another option, and
Yeah.
that would be an example of it. And I think a beautiful world. It is a beautiful world. There's
Right.
love and beauty and grace and grandeur, and magnificence. But it's also ugly and
Yeah.
violent and brutal. And that's just talking about nature, dude. You get into
Yeah.
human nature, and that just adds Heart of Darkness all over. Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. That there is that it's beautiful, but it's also ugly, and you
Yeah.
can coexist with those two things, with knowing that that is true, and you find your purpose and you find your way through the world.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. I love it. Let's listen to the helicopters at the end. Oh, these horns are cool too. Now,
Yeah,
I remember you these are fake horns.
yeah,
So
and I
you purposely distorted the heck out of
yes,
them
I
so
did.
they wouldn't sound too fake, right?
Right, and it actually gave it a cool sound,
Yeah.
um, and it makes it's kind of a dark. It's kind of, I wouldn't say changing the key, but it's changing out. It's introducing elements of the chord, so it adds like this kind of, I don't know, atmospheric
Yeah, I love those
melancholy
horns.
kind of thing.
Oh, this is an awesome solo, by the way, right there.
Oh,
So
and that
good.
section was a total ripoff of What's Going On.
Yeah. There's another song that sounds like Marvin Gaye. Which is
Oh
it?
yeah, Ordinary
Ordinary
World.
Day. This one sounds
Ordinary Day. Yeah,
totally reminds me of a.
yeah, we ripped off Marvin Gaye too.
This one totally sounds like a what's going on kind of a
Yeah,
vibe. I mean, it's a different group,
it's
but
actually
not what's going on. It's
um uh, let's get it on. No, yeah, I think it's let's get it on. That's
it definitely has that 70s
yeah.
cool vibe. This is right now. This is Ordinary Day, but especially that bass part.
Yeah.
You
And that was
played.
the last song we wrote for the album. We were
Okay.
recording drums that day for I don't remember. We were recording drums that day for This Way,
Okay.
and My wife was away for the night. She was at a woman's retreat kind of thing. I was by myself, and no good can come to a man at 2 a.m. But nevertheless, I was up at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep with my wife, and I picked up the bass and I started playing this groove, and I
So it
got
started
into
with
a
the bass groove. That's
yeah,
great.
and then I just whipped up a little beat and I figured out a progression. And the next day I took it to Pete. We recorded drums. Dude, let's do something. And so we worked it through,
That's cool.
and I wrote the lyrics right there, and then we tweaked them, and yeah, and that's how we wrote the song.
That's awesome. I love that bass groove reminds me of like if the bass groove by itself. If you just had the bass by itself and like the drums, it reminds me of that kind of the cop show kind of thing from the 70s, you know? Bum, ba, ba,
Cop
ba,
show.
ba,
Oh,
ba,
dude, yeah, I was totally going for a 70
ba.
vibe with the strings,
Uh-huh.
because I think that a lot of times bands and artists will use strings, and it just sounds, I don't know. It's not just that it sounds cheesy. It sounds like, okay, I'm trying to be pretentious here. But if you listen to, like, I've been listening when we were doing the album, I was listening to a lot of P Funk and Superfly, the Superfly album. Dude, Curtis Mayfield was amazing, and there's strings all over that stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's why I added the strings. I wanted it to
That's a
sound,
big 70s sound. Diana Ross and stuff that, a lot of
yeah, it all
strings.
has strings.
Yeah.
Barry Manilow had a bunch of
Yeah,
strings.
yeah. For sure. And they're real strings. They sound
Oh
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So wait, I didn't get to hear the helicopter in a beautiful world. I don't remember this, so now I gotta
It's
play
it's
this.
it's a little bit
At the
subtle
end?
because
Okay, so
it's at
this
the
will be the
very end.
okay, I'm going to the end here.
That's still a solo.
Ooh, and there's nothing better. I know there's nothing better. Till we get to heaven, it's the best we're gonna do.
That's the only place in the album where I use double tracked vocals for Pete.
We gotta
Oh,
come together. You need to make it better. Oh, it's the least that we can do.
Pete, it's too
Yeah,
good.
I
It's
know,
not
dude.
fair.
I know. Yeah, it's ridiculous. We'll be
I love
recording
the
vocals.
I love your chicken scratch. So good.
Here, just
Those horns parts are really good.
no. It's very subtle, kind of down in the mix a bit, the helicopters, but they're there.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, I hear it. That's cool. I would
Yeah,
have never known there was a helicopter there.
yeah.
I was like, I don't remember hearing a helicopter. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I got. I mean, there's all sorts of like little
Cool.
sound effects, like on dust and then this. And I think that's about it. I like to add little elements like that, just make it a little bit more interesting. I think that
Yeah, that's
anytime you got to mix, you always have to have something interesting that goes on, especially transitioning from one. If you transition from the intro to the verse one, you got to make sure there's some sort of element that either you're taking away stuff or you're adding stuff to make it different. And then same thing, you go to a pre-chorus or a chorus. There's always got to be something different with each transition, and more than just one element. Somebody I remember saying was you should have four.
Hmm.
I don't know if I
I've
necessarily
heard
agree with
that.
that.
Yeah, I've heard you replace these four things with these four
Yeah,
things, or these three things with these three things, or things
and
like
maybe,
that.
but sometimes I think that just a couple things, but there should always be something. And
Yeah,
you always want to introduce something interesting in the mix to let people fixate on something so that they're not bored, especially nowadays.
yeah. Oh, yeah. People's attention spans are TikTok short
Yes,
these days.
indeed,
But
indeed.
but yeah, I listening to all your mixes, it's like I'm really impressed with how much tender loving care you put into all these little bits of ear candy,
Yeah,
little
thanks.
even little things here and there, little moments and little stuff. It's really really good, and it's cool to hear you heard a helicopter and stuff. I heard a recent interview or an interview recently. I think it was a few years back, but with Phineas, Billie
Yeah,
Eilish's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
brother that did all her albums and stuff. And he does that a lot. Uses weird sounds and things they can
Right.
find, and
Makes
like
the cut
she was
the match, the
she was
lighting the
getting
match.
yeah the match yeah,
Yeah,
and she was
yeah.
getting her Invisalign off, and they have these little posts that they're grinding off. So she
Oh,
recorded it with her iPhone,
that's so cool.
and they use that in one of their songs. That one about bury a friend, they used it in there. It's
Oh,
like
that's so cool.
yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
So just things like that. There's one song he had like the sound of a rocket launcher. I mean, one of those the handheld rocket launcher thing. What are those called? The terrorists use to try to bomb
Oh,
the planes.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Rocket propelled grenades,
Yeah,
RPG.
rocket propelled grenade.
Yeah,
Yeah, RPG. Yeah, the
yeah,
sound of an RPG going off, and so that's really cool. Because he said, as a producer, he feels like everybody has the same set of sounds, so he likes to try to find things that are
yeah.
unique.
I think that's valid too, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just different philosophies about things. And I think that it's wonderful when someone can use make an organic sounding album with just all sorts of natural instruments. But I think that in cases like that, you usually need to have better equipment to record it in a better room, to fully get the gist of it. But with just being a little creative, you can do things in your little home studio and make it sound really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, which is the song where you're like you're talking about your relationship with Nancy, and it's not like all the other all the hipsters out there and stuff. Is that on this album? You know which song I'm talking about?
Oh no, that was a song called "Woke Girl."
Oh, I love that
Where-
song. Okay, so
Yeah,
that's coming later.
I actually took your advice and I changed the chorus on it. I just never remixed it. I'll have to,
Okay.
yeah, I changed the chorus. You said you thought you and me were uh, uh, something about we're so in love, and you thought it was a little cliche,
Okay, I don't
and so
remember.
you recommended this, and I thought, oh, okay. So I changed it to you and me were wide awake and
Ooh,
so
I
in
like
love.
that. I like that.
Yeah, and it's still
Oh,
got the
well, I'll look for
strings
that
at
one.
the
I
end.
didn't think that was on here.
No,
I didn't.
that's a John song. I write a lot of John songs. I usually what'll happen is I'll write. I write something every couple days, even if it's just like a lyric. Uh, I wrote this one that I really like that we're gonna have. I think we're gonna put a single out for Memorial Day, and it's called Veterans Day, and it's like, dude, you have no idea what the difference is between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Huge difference, though. But my whole point is that the song is about veteran. As being a veteran, it's so easy for me to take for granted, people dying, the freedoms
Mm,
that were won by their sacrifice, and so it's really a song for me and my fellow veterans, so that we can remember and
that's
not take
cool.
that for granted. And so I write stuff all the time. A lot of it is just mediocre.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know?
like what you said about write. You got to write a lot to come up with good ones, and I totally agree with that. As
Yeah.
a songwriter too, I and I don't. It's rare that I go, okay, I'm going to sit down and write a song. Like it usually doesn't turn out very good. It's more like
Yeah.
something that happens to me. Like I'm
Right.
walking around and I realize I have this song in my head, or I have a melody in my head,
Yeah.
and that's where I got to capture it real quick, or I'm just playing something on the guitar, and then I suddenly I hear something, and boom, there's for me it's usually a whole song kind of fully formed,
Yeah.
um, or at least or a portion of a song, chorus or whatever maybe, but I gotta just capture it really quick. So I've got hundreds of little
Yeah.
fragments
So
on
do
my
I. Yeah.
iPhone.
On my phone, like I've got all these different notes,
Yeah.
uh, all these different notes on here, and then I've got all these different recordings on here, because that's usually how I do it. I'll be sitting on with my acoustic guitar, and if I want to capture something, I'll work out a verse and couple verses maybe in a chorus, and I'll just record acoustic guitar, even if it's just a mess. That way, I'm at least capturing that moment, so that if I do forget it, which I will, it's at least there, so I can expand on it later if I really like it.
That's awesome. That's cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
And sometimes stuff is garbage and sometimes it's good, but like some of the stuff I'm releasing now it's kind of like it's because I had it on an iPhone in 2017, and then I
Yeah.
hear it back every once in a while, and it kind of it's like I still like that.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
other stuff I like it in the moment, and then I'll listen back to it.
Uh,
I'm like, that stinks. I don't know what I thought. I
what
thought it
really
was
sucks,
good.
dude, is when you go through all the hassle of recording all these
Actually recording
parts,
it, and then it still
and
stinks.
you spend all this time, and then you listen to it, and it's like, no,
Yeah,
no.
for
Because
sure.
my biggest thing is I wouldn't say I write many bad songs anymore. I think that what I write more is mediocre
Yeah.
songs, and I don't want to really. I like I'll write something and then I'll present it to Pete, but I only present the stuff to him that I think are good songs. So he
That's
doesn't
cool.
get something from me every week. So,
Well, I
but
like that you guys are collaborating. That's really
yeah,
good. I think that's valuable. I've been collaborating more with Jeff Fawcett again.
hmm
He, you know Jeff Fawcett. Maybe
yeah,
he
yeah,
wrote
yeah.
Hallelujah, and so we've been he on this last. I'm about to release an EP of Ties to the Light stuff, and he wrote the lyrics for 3 of the songs. I would just send him because a lot of times I'll have that's the hardest part for me. A lot of times I'll have a song and I've got like certain um, vocal I know what it the vowels are almost
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
want,
yeah.
and so I just sent him another recording a couple days ago of it's a song kind of fully formed, but I just have all the parts, but just
Yeah,
vocals,
I'm
just
the I'm the
sounds.
same. But I do that. Like sometimes the lyrics come first, or the or a piece of a lyric will come
Mhm.
first, and sometimes it's just the music.
Yeah,
And if I'm trying to remember it, then I'm just gonna mouth blah, 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 or,
yeah.
just
Exactly,
mouth the idea, and then you figure
exactly.
it out afterward.
Yeah.
But I like writing lyrics. I love lyrics, and like and they come from all sorts of different places. We've got a new single that we're releasing on the 13th, and it's called "Things Fall Apart."
Oh yeah.
And the genesis of it was a book that I was reading of short stories from Joan Didion. It's called "Slouching Towards Bethlehem." The title of the book, it comes from the last line of a poem called "The Second Coming" by W.B. Yeats. And in slouching in the book from Joan, the short story from Joan Didion, she's talking about it's at the height of the hippie movement at the end of the 60s, and she's a journalist, and this is a true story, it's an account, and she just sees, I mean, she's an East Coast liberal. It's not like she's like some conservative that's talking about how bad the liberals are, and it's nothing like that. She's just writing what she sees. And so all these people that she meets that are hippies, and at the end of it culminates with this hippie couple giving acid to their 3-year-old kid
Oh my
because they want
gosh.
their kid's mind to be expanded. And
Yikes.
it's to show the degeneracy. And going back to the poem by Yeats, it's called "The Second Coming." It's not about Jesus coming back.
Mm,
It's the line is "Things fall apart, the center cannot hold." So
mm.
it's basically this new beast that mankind is creating that is going to come back and save the world. So the center cannot hold this moral foundation that we have, not only as a country, maybe less about a country than we as human beings. It cannot hold the way that it is. We have to have something more solid. And he draws a lot of allusions to, going back to Bethlehem, slouching towards Bethlehem. It's about Jesus. It's about this foundation of Christianity, some sort of foundation that's real and that can stand, because the center, as we know it, it cannot hold. And so
Wow.
that's what the song is about. I mean, it really, and the line is, oh gosh, center cannot hold. Gosh, I'm gonna have to play it. I
Go
can't
ahead. Go
remember
ahead.
it. I can't remember it, man. Final mixes.
And this is one that's coming out on an EP that you're releasing soon.
No, we're just recording. We're gonna release one single a
Or you're
month.
doing singles at a time.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
just because that seems to be the predominant way
The
of
way to
doing
do
it
it
these
these
days.
days.
Yeah, so it's got like this little part. What is the line?
Hours, who die 1,000 times before the day regrets are laid to rest.
This is my recording.
Oh, I reckon it's in the air. Do the others even care? Buckle up, the day is coming soon.
That's what it is.
Awesome.
So the things cannot hold. They get defeated. The things cannot hold. Superficially, it's just that. Or I'm sorry, things fall apart when least expected. That's the line of the chorus.
Yeah.
And superficially, that's what it's about. Things do fall apart. We don't always expect it. But at a deeper level, it's talking about society. It's talking about the morality that we've created for ourselves, this post-Christian nation that we live in, maybe even a post-Christian world, at least in the first world. And just how we need some sort of foundation. As Christians, we know that it's the Word of God. It's Jesus. We know that is the foundation for everything that we do. But if you live in a secularized society and you don't have that, all you do is you see things falling apart around you.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people, in their heart of hearts, know that there needs to be some stability. Some people will say it's government. It'll be some act of social care that brought on by the government. It's going to be this or that, saving the world, whatever it is. But ultimately, things do fall apart.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even the ideals, if you look at the ideals of, like, let's say Marxism, for example. The ideals are not bad. It's like, okay, we want everybody to share. We want it to be equal. We want, but look at what Marxism did. I mean, in the 20th century,
absolutely did,
causing millions and millions of people to die and the most horrific things to happen. Or it's just nothing besides the kingdom of God works. Right?
Because you have to deal with because we always have to contend with human spirit, our human nature. Human nature, we want more than what we got, and we're not afraid to use force or do whatever it takes to get it. At least with Christianity, we have grace.
Yeah.
We're jacked up and we know it.
Yeah.
There's no delusions there, man.
Yeah.
But anyway,
awesome. Awesome, man. What's that?
Any last questions?
No, I've taken so much of your time already. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you taking the time, man. It's been awesome.
So I can't wait to hear these songs live. That's going to be something to try to.
Hopefully, we'll be able to play here in the next few months.
Yeah, and if you need a keyboard player / secondary
guitar player, backing vocal dude,
call me up. Yeah,
we'll put together a hybrid band.
Is he going to do the singing from the drums thing?
No, we're gonna have to have a real drummer.
Okay.
I mean, not a real drummer. We're gonna have to have a drummer.
A different drummer. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I always thought it was kind of cheesy having the singer. I mean,
the
Eagles and Don Henley. Okay, it worked, but I think he was typically out front, and they had a different drummer, and I don't remember.
I don't know. I watched this Eagles documentary on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on there. It was a fantastic documentary. I was never a huge Eagles fan. I think it got overplayed on radio so much that I kind of tuned it out at the time. But now, look, now I really appreciate it. I mean,
absolutely.
And the recording is incredible. But Don Henley is playing the drums. I mean, he's playing like, Hotel California, singing just flawlessly.
It's amazing.
As he's playing flawless drums. It just, and his voice is so distinctive. It's just
I know, dude. I love the Eagles.
Killer.
But I don't think we're gonna go that route. We're gonna have a regular drummer. That way he can sing up front and
he's a great front man. He's a great front man. So that'll be awesome.
All right, bro. Well, I appreciate you doing this, man.
Yeah, I hope everybody I would say buys your album, but nowadays it's not much
nowadays
that happens.
Really stream it, man.
Just turn it on, put it on repeat, and just leave it going.
There you go.
Hours and hours and hours, so we can earn some money. Yeah.
All right, brother.
All right, talk to you later. Have a good one.
Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Talk to you. Bye.